How many times have you dedicated yourself to making a change, doing something with it, but then fallen off and haven't stuck to it? When it comes down to the staying power of making a change in your life and being consistent with those actions that will help see it through what it is you want to do or achieve or accomplish, things just seem to fall flat. I brought on a special guest today that I truly have seen walk the walk when it comes to making a change and being consistent. I'm bringing on my friend and client, Brittany Heyboer, who is a career and life coach that helps empower ambitious women to get clear, confident, and courageous on unlocking a life that lights you up. And Brittany is actually one of my podcast production clients. About a year ago, and we shared this love story in the episode, I slid into Brittany's DMs when I had it on my heart to try something new, to make a pivot, to make a change. And I was in the beginning processes of that. I reached out to Brittany, and we've been working together for almost exactly a year now. And I'm bringing her on to the podcast today to talk about making a change and then being consistent with that decision, so then you see it all the way through. Whether it is your health and fitness, making a decision, you're going to be really inspired and empowered by Brittany in how she talks about tackling and being tactical when you say you want to do something, how you can stick to it instead of fall off time and time again, like a lot of us do when we are wanting to make changes and do something different or accomplish a certain goal. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Don't forget to check out Brittany's podcast, Her Unlocked Podcast. I will link all of her details down in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the Living in Sync podcast, where we will talk about the biological blueprint of your cycle and how your hormones impact every area of your life. I'm your host, Joelle, certified nutritionist, mom of two, fitness coach for over a decade, and I want to help you better understand your cycle to work with your body in achieving your goals. I will teach you how to care for your body in a well-rounded and realistic way that caters to your season of life and feel freaking amazing. In every episode, you will get tips, takeaways, and just feel like this is a heart-to-heart chat with a friend. Let's roll into today's episode. Oh, my friends, I am so excited to introduce to you Brittany Heyboer. We've worked together pretty much a year. It's been a full year of us working together. We'll share more about that. But Brittany, welcome to the Living in Sync podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am beyond honored to be on here and to get to share a bit of our story on top of my own. But I think we have a pretty cool one to share as well. And so this is going to be fun.
This is going to be so fun, you guys. And I have worked with Brittany and seen Brittany's journey and heard a lot of Brittany's stories. And the one thing about you, Brittany, that I just absolutely love and admire so much is you've conquered a lot of change. And you've done a lot of different things in your life to make big changes. And you've actually followed through on those things. And I think there are a lot of ladies listening right now where they want to make changes in their career or their health and fitness or with various things in their lives, but they just don't stick to it, or they don't continue to take action, or it just falls off for whatever reason. And this leads me into my first question for you is like, what do you think has been the biggest difference between you and others on following through with being consistent and making change in your life?
Yeah, I love this question. I get it often. And here's what I would say. One, I'm not perfect. And that's the whole thing. Like, I am focused on progress over perfection. I know that is not a new statement. I'm sure it's one everyone's heard, but I am really focused on the 1% every day. How can I become a better version of myself 1% every day? Whether that be, my health journey is a huge part of my story. I'm sure we'll unpack that. whether it be my health, my business, how I show up for my family, my marriage, my community, all of these pieces, and really understanding my deeper why. To why do I want this particular thing in my life? When I think about consistency, I always ask people, well, why do you want to be consistent in that? Like why, again, health's a great one. Like why do I want to move my body more? Why do I want to fuel my body better? Why do I want to get 8+ hours of sleep? Why am I making this decision? Because that matters. And for me, it comes down to my core values and the impact I want to have and how I want to show up. And so those are some of the things I think about that I teach clients and women that I work with, on top of just continuing to challenge myself with that.
Yeah. And let's go even more micro into that. I mean, we love talking about health and fitness on here, and really health and fitness was one of those catalysts for, health and fitness, which led to change in your starting your business and all of that. Really talk to them about like where you were at in your health journey, that catalyst of the why, but then go into those micro details of like the small steps, because you're right. Everybody wants to like overhaul everything all at once. So start talking about like, what were your 1% things?
Yeah. So I would say I'm sitting here 2 years into this journey, because I don't like to talk about a before and after, because it's never that. We're always learning, growing, expanding. And with my health journey, I was about to have baby number 2 back in 2021. We just kind of started to come out of the pandemic, and I really felt like I was sitting on the sidelines of my life, both figuratively and literally. Like I would cringe when my child, my firstborn, would ask me to play, because I just did not. I felt depleted. I felt exhausted. I felt burned out. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't want to just survive. I know a lot of people talk about surviving in motherhood, especially in the little season, right?
Yeah.
And I just was like, I don't want that to be my story. I don't want to bring my daughter into this world in particular and be surviving. And so I was like, what is important for me to thrive in this season? And I knew it came down to starting with my health. Like that is the catalyst that changed everything for me. And it wasn't my first time, quote unquote, getting healthy. Like that has been a part of my story, my up and down battle with loving myself. And I know many can relate to that story. And I wanted this to be different. So that was part of the first thing I did. Is I was like, this isn't about looks. This isn't about bouncing back. This isn't about the number on the scale. This was about getting energy. I talk about more capacity.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed about you and your journey comparatively to others is it didn't seem like you ever have gone about this with like a deadline in mind, where it's like, oh, if you didn't see certain number of poundage loss or certain pant size different, the journey was over. It's not working. I'm throwing in the towel. You just really elevated into this being, and the word lifestyle gets thrown around, but I'm using it in a very concrete way of like embodiment.
Yeah, I love that.
I am becoming this woman that takes care of her body, that is going to make mindful, healthful changes in her nutrition and do movement that when you're done working out, it brings a smile to your face, or it's going to give you more mental clarity. And I think that's where so many women are like, if they don't see the quote unquote flashy results fast enough, it gets to be that point where it's like they give up. They're like, this isn't working anymore.
Yeah. And one of the questions I asked myself every day is like, what would the healthiest version of me do today? And sometimes that's like every decision, depending on the day. Like, and let me be honest, I talk about being focused on progress over perfection. There are many moments I am choosing not the healthiest thing for me. That is not my story. My story is not that I make every food choice, movement choice, but it's about like, in this moment, can I make a different decision because I've stopped and paused and been intentional than I would have made if I didn't stop and pause, And so I really challenge myself to do that every day. That's where the 1% comes in. The other piece about the 1% is understanding the season you're in. I don't think everyone thinks about that. And so that was something that I was super intentional about. And I I was like, okay, in this season, I'm going to be in postpartum, having a second child with a high energy, deep feeling kiddo that doesn't independently play. That's my firstborn. So juggling that and also working a full-time corporate job, though I was on maternity leave, I knew that was going to be a part of my story and in my season I was in. And so I was like, what realistically can I do? Because I wasn't doing anything. So I wasn't moving my body. I wasn't focused on my nutrition. Like I was really, would never say starting from scratch because the lifestyle I decided to do, I had done in the past. So I was in a better place than I was before, but I wasn't walking into getting healthy with this mindset of I'm going to do all of these things overnight. I started with my nutrition and I was like, how do I pay attention? I'm a big fan of macros. Everyone's got their own thing. But I was like, how do I bring more protein in? Because that was always a struggle for me. So like starting out small around that. How do I drink more water? Super important, not only for my health, but if I wanted to try and breastfeed, which that's a whole nother journey in and of itself. If I was going to try that again, like hydration was super important, and rest in this season, a toss up. So, that wasn't going to be a part of it. And so it was really focusing on those few things. I'm also a lover of Jesus, a woman of Christ. And so I also knew spending time with God was going to matter if I was going to do this right. And so that's not everybody's story, but I was like, I know it's important to carve out time. And so I'd be pumping in the early mornings, reading my Bible. Because if I was going to be a healthy woman, it just wasn't about the physical piece. It was the mental, the spiritual. And there was a financial piece as well when I talk about kind of the four core components of the things that I shifted when I talk about my health. It isn't all about physical.
Right. And what I'm really hearing then is like it was thought, mindset, then embodiment, which then led to the action, and then having that understanding of the outcome is, you talked about like that deeper rooted why. The outcome wasn't only attached to like such a surface level thing. It was very much more attached to an internal thing.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
how did making the change in your health and fitness and then the consistency that it takes bleed over into other areas of your life? And this is where you can really talk about honing in on like how change and being consistent is just something that you have. And you guys, I'm saying this to you, Brittany, I've seen fully embrace and change a lot of things. I really wrote or voxered Brittany, a vulnerable voxer, about her sober curious journey because I edit Brittany's show, Unlock Her Podcast, or her Unlocked podcast. Sorry, I say that backwards all the time. But I really was so interested when you were first sharing about your sober curious journey because it's hard. That is something hard to do. And I think this is the first thing that I really was like, I knew you and your fitness transformation, but I knew you kind of in the you're in the foundation of it. It's a part of you now. Yeah. And in your dedication to your business, I came in knowing that was a part of your foundation, but being sober curious, and I'm going to link those episodes for you guys to listen to because making the change in something like that is hard. And Brittany hasn't just done it with health and fitness. It's gone into sober curiosity. It's been into starting a business while she's also working in a corporate job, and then making shifts and changes and different things and pivots along the way of that. And so how has that catalyst really brought in more into your life? Because if you can be consistent and make change in your health and fitness, I truly believe you can make the change in any other area because that's a hard area to make changes in.
I absolutely agree. And I was just thinking about this while you were talking, like it does make me a bit emotional because like I've been reflecting a lot on my story because I'm coming up on Evelyn, my second born, her birthday is December 3rd. And so we are really, when this episode drops, like right on the cusp of this two-year journey I've been on. And it started with health, but what I think about is just my willingness to make uncommon decisions common in my life. So it's not about doing what everyone else is doing. Like that's what I think about with sober curiosity. But I also like, people are like, how do you have time to build a business, to do all of these things, to prioritize yourself? And again, not every aspect of my life is perfect. There are definitely areas that need a little bit more, attention and care. And, we're working on that because we're all a work in progress. But I keep going back to this place of, I want a life that looks and feels different, that looks and feels like me being a present mom, me being able to hold what is most important, not only for my family, which I think is fabulous, but what also I know God is calling me to do. I've always known that God wanted more for me, but I didn't have the capacity. I talk a ton about capacity because my health, getting focused on my health and it making a woman who is healthy, not a woman who's trying to be healthy. I am a woman who is healthy. Our words matter. Has been the catalyst for how I show up in a lot of areas of my life. And it is a lot of times rooted in our thought patterns, because our thoughts become our beliefs become our behaviors. And so I always start there of like, what are the thoughts I'm letting take root? And am I letting other people plant thoughts and stories that aren't serving me well? Because I spent a lot of my life letting other people be in the driver's seat because I care deeply what other people thought. And I was out there performing, looking for the next accolade, climbing the corporate ladder. And I was done with that. And as soon as I got healthy, I felt like I had the capacity to go, okay, God, what do you want me to do with these gifts? And I felt called, actually. My journey started by dipping my toe into entrepreneurship as a health coach with this partnering with this particular company. And so it wasn't an overnight thing. I talk about that 1%, and it's been a 2-year journey, and it's going to continue to be a journey. But I was like, okay, I know this changed my life. I know God's calling me to change other women's lives. Like, maybe this is it. So I dove into that. And it wasn't easy, and there were pockets of feeling fulfilled, but I also just felt like this feels hard. And I was like, is it hard because I have more to learn, which was probably the case, or is it also potentially hard because God's like, yeah, this is a stepping stone to something else? And it was a stepping stone to something else.
Yeah.
Which is where Unlock Her was born.
Yeah. And so with that, to the ladies listening, whether it is making big changes in your health, the people that you're surrounding yourself with, navigating career stuff. That's why I brought Brittany on here today, because on her podcast, on her Instagram, she really does provide that type of support for those of you. And so, Brittany, what do you think is your greatest wisdom or really impactful things that you could share with the women that are listening today, that are in those shoes of navigating big changes in their own lives? But there's fear, there's uncertainty, there's like that. Oh my gosh, you guys, Brittany coined this term, mind drama. My ladies have heard me say that before. I'm always like, I learned this from Brittany, but they've got that mind drama going on in their head when it comes to making change and consistency.
Yeah. So one, I think the first and foremost is really getting clear on your core values, who you are, like what are your unique gifts, what's the impact. And I know this sounds heavy and can feel overwhelming, but I promise this type of work deeply matters because it is your North Star. If you don't know who you are, or if you're a woman of God, whose you are, and you don't know what your core values are. I have an episode where I was honest. Like, I had been told to do these exercises. I'm in corporate America. We're always doing stuff around core values and your impact and personal branding. And I was like, yeah, write something random down, and I didn't understand the gravity of actually sitting with that and really unpacking it for myself, nobody else, not a check the box activity, because that is then how you can go back to, how does a woman who wants to make that type of impact, who has those core values, who has those unique gifts, like how does she show up now, not in the future? I always talk about like show up as her now. You don't have to wait. Like what kind of decision would she make today in her life, in her marriage, if you have kids in motherhood, if you're in a corporate job, how would I show up in this meeting? I've been there. There's been moments where I'm already triggered before I jump on the call. And it's like reminding myself and like writing it somewhere and being like, you know, this is who I want to be. This is how I want to show up. These are my core values. And as soon as your core values are challenged, like those are your heck no's. I talk about saying full body heck yeses and full body heck no's. Your boundaries get easier when you have that North Star. And so I call it the spirit work. It's really unpacking that and discovering who you really are and your willingness to stand in that. Because that's where you get clear. You can have a bit more confidence and courage in taking that aligned action I'm a big fan of taking aligned action, not just any action, but aligned action. You can't take aligned action if you don't know who you are and what your North Star is, right? Or the impact you want to have. And then there's a piece that I talk a ton about, which is then trusting yourself in the process, which I find is actually for me is the hardest piece. Also trusting God and surrendering. But that's a piece of the puzzle.
Right. Yeah. So we'll kind of wrap up here and end. And I just wanted to share with you guys, Brittany's kind of like love story. So Brittany came into my life. I know people usually start their episodes with this, but I'm like, we're going to round it out here at the end because it is so special. And like, I know on Brittany's podcast, I'm going to kind of share my POV of things, or she's going to share her POV of things. So I wanted to share it here with you guys. But about a year ago, I had, my podcast growing and I really just loved it. And it was a foundation and it still is. And we're still here. Obviously, you guys are listening. But there was just something in my heart that was like, try something different. Try something different. And I was listening to a podcast, as I do, being podcast obsessed, where the question was like, if you got paid just doing something you love and you're already doing, what would that be? And I was like, podcasting, like listening to people's podcasts, telling them how impactful their podcasts are, giving them life and energy to continue going on your podcast. Because Brittany's podcast is coming up on almost a year now. And it's very much like a long-term relationship with podcasting where it's like fun. And so like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting right away in the beginning. And then you have to go into refinement and get gritty. And sometimes there's going to be times where that's not the perfect conditions, or you don't know what to talk about, or you feel like you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, right? But I was like, that is something that I could do. And so I put it out there to just a couple friends, and a mutual friend, Julie, kind of connected us because she knew you had like dropped the little nugget of like, oh, I'd love to start a podcast. And so I reached out to Brittany, and it was a catalyst for me making a change in my life and dedicating myself to being consistent, because I knew Brittany was going to be doing a weekly episode. So therefore, there was really kind of that accountability piece in there. And I'm sharing this whole story to round it out to you guys in talking about the point Brittany made of, it's not changing everything all at once. It's a 1 degree difference. And it's kind of funny now with my podcast production business. I have certain services, consultation that I have available offerings in, but I'm starting to share about this business now when I'm fully booked. Like I'm fully booked. I have a full client roster. And I'm getting people messaging me like, oh, this is so new and exciting for you. And I'm like, I've literally been building this out behind the scenes for a year, but it started with that one decision, that little inkling and tug on my heart. It wasn't something where I know there's big power in sharing your dreams and goals and putting yourself out there like that, but I really just did it one small step at a time. And Brittany, like I said, is now coming up on her 1 year of podcasting. We're going to be doing some strategy sessions on some really cool things that she's going to be bringing to her podcast. And I can just say now, a year away from what I was like a year ago. All the steps that you gave to these ladies was exactly on point for me creating the change in my life, sticking with it, and being consistent. Because whether it's your health and fitness, your business journey, making career changes within your corporate career, I know a lot of you ladies are longing for that type of content and somebody to relate to in that aspect. So another reason why I wanted to bring Brittany onto the show was it really starts with that one step at a time and letting God point you to the next right step and the next right step. And I've talked about this on a few episodes now that have been kind of business related, where, you know, oftentimes we think we need to follow the structure and strategy of somebody else. My most successful businesses have been from my delusion and my, you could call it delulu, you could call it blind faith, where it's like it was just one small step at a time. And now, you know, seeing and knowing like that's how, and I've second-handedly just with editing your shows definitely learned a ton from you in this last year. And so these ladies that are listening, you guys, if it's your health and fitness, if it is changing your lifestyle and your career, I know we see the 40-pound weight losses. We see the I make X figures on social media, or I went from this place to that place. And we tend to leave out that messy middle. We tend to like weed out the alignedness that needs to happen in order to stay consistent and feel internally that we want to continue down that path. So I just really wanted to bring Brittany on to talk to you guys about this, because yes, if you make changes by 1% difference at a time in certain areas of your life. And Brittany, you can kind of, you know, carry off with the thoughts that you have off of what I talked about, but also like, were all your changes all at once? Like if you really listen to Brittany's story, I think you will kind of find that it was one thing, then one thing, then one thing.
Yeah. So one thing that you were reminding me of when you were sharing your story, and I talk a lot about this, is getting curious. So like when I talked about my sober curiosity to start with, which now I'm like, I am sober. I'm no longer sober curious, but I started from a place of curiosity, which is similar to what you were talking about with podcasting. You're like, I'm just going to follow this one step. I'm going to get curious. I'm going to put feelers out there. I'm going to bring people in. I'm just going to keep getting curious. Like, I feel like that is I talk about red threads too, like things that kind of show up in a lot of different parts of your story. And I think the willingness to get curious, to fail forward, and to just test and learn is huge, which is, again, similar to my health journey, my business journey, podcasting, all aspects is that willingness to get curious.
Yeah. Yeah. So share with the ladies, like what's going on in your world right now? How do you help and serve women, and where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So I shared a bit about my journey of dipped my toe in the water for entrepreneurship, partnering with a company that I am still obsessed with from a health perspective, and come to find out I was doing a lot of mindset work with my clients, which was not surprising. We talked a bit about mindset here, and that's where I Unlock Her, which is my career and life coaching brand. And so I really stepped away from health coaching, but still bringing in a lot of my expertise. I have a background in HR. I have a background in learning and development. Coaching is always something I've done for over a decade inside and outside corporate America. And I had a really incredible business coach go like, it seems like there's a business idea here. And again, didn't happen overnight. It was like, okay, like I'm going to put an offer out and I'm going to see how I can really live on purpose in my purpose. And so it has been a wild ride. I've supported female entrepreneurs. I've supported women in corporate America, women not in corporate America. And so it's been really incredible over the last year, because Unlock Her Co is about a year old and she's really just getting started. But I really talk to the ambitious woman who is feeling overwhelmed, stuck, really empowering her to build confidence and capacity. We talked about capacity today, build confidence and capacity to really step into what's most important to her in her life and her career, because I see them as integrated. I don't see them as separate, which is why I talk a lot about career and life coaching as one for me, because I think we're always talking about both. Work-life harmony is something I'm really passionate about, which can feel hard at times, right? When we're juggling all of the things. But I just want more women to feel like they can, I don't know that I love the saying have it all, but have all of what they really desire in life while doing things that light them up. I talk about really finding work that lights you up, because I believe that that impacts your life. If you're not doing work you love, I would say start there and figure out how do you lean into that more. That's the work I do with my clients when it comes to their life, because a lot of times we feel like it's something in our life, but it's actually our potential 9-to-5 or the business. If you're building a business, the business you're building, but it's really that's impacting your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys, if you are looking to work with someone to help you with career and life coaching, I will recommend Brittany from the rooftops, because especially when making big changes, it is always so beneficial to have support. You know, whether it's like, there's a gym that's local to you and you're like, oh, okay, get the gym membership, invest in a couple training sessions, maybe somebody to help you just get familiar with the things. That's going to lead to you being more confident and more accountable to your journey. And so if you are struggling in those areas of life, you're looking to make those changes, it needs to be deep rooted from the mindset and values and heart piece, like Brittany talked about. Reach out, connect with Brittany and get the support, because it's truly pivotal. I've had mentors along the way. Brittany's had mentors in her journey along the way, and it really helps you unpack and bring to light more than I think uncovering on your own can. So thank you, Brittany, for being here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I forgot, depending on when this drops, I am doing a free masterclass all about master your mindset. And it really is about unlocking the capacity and confidence in yourself. And so if this episode happens then, otherwise we can link the recording of it, but it's an incredible way to start to peel back and do that spirit work I talked about on this call. And it's a great way to kind of master your mindset as you walk into the new year. So I just want to make sure I shared that as well.
I love that. I love that so much. So we will make sure that we have that link down below. I'm going to link to you guys in the show notes some of my favorite episodes of Brittany, so you can go and binge listen the Her Unlocked podcast. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you loved what you heard or you want to share your favorite episode topics, please leave a rating and review. This helps the podcast growth and gives people an idea of what the podcast is all about. Something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you before we go is that we now have a Patreon page. This has replaced the Feminine Edge collective community in a cohesive place that is easier for me to manage and cheaper for you. If you are interested in our monthly classes, exclusive day in the life vlogs, Bible studies, community Q&A, and more, go to patreon.com/livingInSync and join for just $5 a month. Check out the show notes for any links or details of things referenced in today's episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one.